The September morning in London carried a different kind of chill. It was not just the autumn air that made people pull their coats tighter around themselves. There was something deeper, something that touched the hearts of everyone who had gathered outside Westminster Cathedral. The bells were ringing slowly, their sound floating across the city like a gentle goodbye. Inside the grand cathedral, the royal family had come together for a moment that would soon capture the attention of millions. They were there to say farewell to Catherine, the Duchess of Kent, who had passed away at the age of 92. But what happened that day would become more than just a funeral. It would become a moment that showed the world something beautiful about love, family, and the bonds that hold us together. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, stood among the gathered royals in her elegant black dress. Her face showed the kind of quiet strength that had become her trademark over the years. Beside her, Prince William maintained his usual composed presence, but those who looked closely could see the emotion in his eyes. This was not just another royal duty. This was personal. The Duchess of Kent had been a beloved figure in the royal family for decades. She had seen the monarchy through times of great change, always carrying herself with grace and kindness. Her gentle spirit had touched many lives, including those of the younger generation of royals. For Kate, she had been more than just a relative by marriage. She had been a guide, a friend, and someone who understood the unique challenges of joining the royal family. As the service progressed, the cathedral filled with the sound of hymns and prayers. The Archbishop spoke of a life well lived, of service and dedication, of love and family. But it was in the quiet moments between the words that the real emotions showed themselves. Kate's hand found William's, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about their support for each other during difficult times. The congregation included members of the royal family from across generations. King Charles stood at the front, his face showing the weight of loss. This year had been particularly challenging for him, with his own health battles and the responsibilities of being monarch. Yet he carried himself with the dignity expected of a king, even as his heart clearly grieved for his aunt. What made this funeral different from other royal occasions was the visible humanity of it all. Gone were the days when royals were expected to show no emotion in public. This new generation, led by William and Kate, understood that showing feelings was not a sign of weakness, but of strength. They knew that the public wanted to see real people, not just figures in crowns and formal clothes. The service included readings from scripture and personal memories shared by family members. Each word painted a picture of a woman who had lived her life with purpose and joy. The Duchess had been known for her love of music, her charitable work, and her ability to make everyone feel welcome in her presence. These were the qualities that had endeared her to so many, both within the royal family and beyond. As the final hymn began to play, the atmosphere in the cathedral shifted. There was a sense of completion, of a life celebrated rather than just mourned. The royal family began to prepare for the final farewell, the moment when the coffin would be taken from the cathedral to begin its final journey. Outside, hundreds of people had gathered despite the cool morning. They stood in respectful silence, many holding flowers or wearing black ribbons. Among them were representatives from the many charities the Duchess had supported over the years. Their presence was a testament to the impact one person could have when they dedicated themselves to helping others. The media was present too, their cameras ready to capture this historic moment. But there was a different feel to their coverage this time. Rather than looking for scandal or drama, they seemed to understand the solemnity of the occasion. This was about honoring a life, not creating headlines. As the service drew to a close, the royal family began to move toward the exit. Protocol dictated a certain order, a certain way of doing things. But within those formal constraints, there was room for genuine emotion and connection. This balance between tradition and humanity would soon create a moment that no one expected. The bells continued their steady toll as the congregation slowly filed out. Each person carried with them memories of the service, of the woman they had come to honor. But they were about to witness something that would stay with them even longer than the beautiful words and music of the funeral service. The steps of Westminster Cathedral seemed to stretch endlessly as the royal family emerged into the September daylight. The coffin, draped in royal purple and adorned with white orchids, was carefully carried toward the waiting hearse. Each movement was precise, rehearsed, yet filled with genuine sorrow. Kate stood beside William, her posture perfect, but her eyes soft with emotion. Throughout the service, she had been a pillar of support, not just for her husband, but for the entire family. This was the Kate that the public had come to love, strong yet tender, royal yet relatable. She understood that being a princess meant more than wearing tiaras and attending galas. It meant being there for family in their darkest moments. King Charles stood near the cathedral doors, accepting condolences from various dignitaries and family friends. At 76, he had experienced many losses in his life, but each one still touched him deeply. The loss of his aunt came at a particularly difficult time. His own battle with cancer earlier in the year had reminded him of mortality in a very personal way. Yet here he stood, fulfilling his duty as monarch while also being simply a nephew saying goodbye to a beloved aunt. The relationship between Charles and Kate had evolved beautifully over the years. When she first joined the royal family, she had been nervous around the then Prince of Wales. He seemed so formal, so steeped in tradition. But time had revealed the warm heart beneath the royal exterior. Charles had welcomed Kate not just as his son's wife, but as a daughter he never had. Their bond had grown stronger during difficult times. When Kate faced her own health challenges with cancer, Charles had been one of her strongest supporters. They shared late-night phone calls where they talked not about royal duties, but about fear, hope, and the importance of family. He sent her handwritten notes of encouragement, often including pressed flowers from his beloved gardens at Highgrove. Kate, in return, had brought a fresh energy to Charles's life. She helped bridge the gap between the traditional monarchy he represented and the modern world their children would inherit. Her easy manner with the public, her genuine interest in people's lives, and her ability to make everyone feel special had impressed Charles deeply. He often told friends that Kate had the rare gift of making royalty seem accessible without diminishing its dignity. As the funeral proceedings continued outside the cathedral, small moments revealed the depth of their relationship. When Charles's voice cracked slightly during a conversation with the bishop, Kate was the first to notice. She moved closer. Not obviously, but enough to show support. When an elderly relative struggled with the steps, both Charles and Kate moved to help, their actions synchronized without need for words. The hearse was now ready, its back door open to receive the coffin. The military bearers moved with practiced precision, their faces solemn beneath their ceremonial caps. This was the moment when the finality of death became most real, when the physical presence of a loved one was about to leave for the last time. William had moved to stand with his father, the two men sharing a moment of quiet understanding. 3 generations of royal men, each dealing with loss in their own way, yet united in their grief. George, Charlotte, and Louis had remained at home, too young for such a solemn occasion, but their absence was felt. Kate had spent the morning before leaving explaining to them why Mummy and Daddy would be sad today, helping them understand death in terms a child could grasp. The crowd outside remained remarkably quiet. Occasionally, the click of a camera or the shuffle of feet would break the silence, but mostly there was just the sound of the wind and the distant rumble of London traffic. Many in the crowd had their own memories of the Duchess of Kent. Perhaps a smile at a garden party, a kind word during a difficult time, or simply the inspiration of watching someone live a life of service. Among the mourners were representatives from the royal family's various patronages and charities. The Duchess had been particularly passionate about music education for underprivileged children, and many of those whose lives she had touched were present. Their tears were perhaps the most genuine tribute to a life well lived. As the coffin was secured in the hearse, the family began to arrange themselves for the final farewell. Protocol suggested a certain order, but in this moment, protocol seemed less important than comfort. Family members grouped together based on emotional need rather than rank. It was a small but significant sign of how the monarchy was evolving under Charles's reign. The photographers, sensing something significant was about to happen, adjusted their positions. They had been respectful throughout the service, understanding that this was not just another royal event, but a deeply personal moment for the family. Yet they also knew that these images would become part of history, a record of how the modern monarchy dealt with loss and showed its humanity. Kate's eyes met Charles's across the small distance between them. In that look was a shared understanding of all they had been through together, all the challenges they had faced, and all the support they had given each other. Neither knew that in the next few moments they would create an image that would touch hearts around the world and show everyone what family really meant. The moment came naturally, without planning or rehearsal. As King Charles prepared to walk toward his waiting car, Kate moved toward him with the grace that had become her signature. What happened next would be captured by photographers and shared around the world, but in that instant, it was simply about two people who had become family in the truest sense of the word. Kate reached up and gently placed her hand on Charles's shoulder. The king turned toward her, and their eyes met with an understanding that needed no words. Then, with infinite tenderness, Kate leaned in and kissed him softly on both cheeks. It was not the formal air kiss often seen at royal gatherings, but something genuine and heartfelt. As she pulled back, she dropped into a small curtsy, but her hand remained on his shoulder, and her eyes never left his face. The look they shared in that moment spoke volumes. It was a look of shared grief, of mutual support, of a bond that had grown through trials and triumphs. Charles's eyes, often so controlled in public, showed a glimmer of emotion. He reached up and briefly covered Kate's hand with his own, a gesture of gratitude and affection that was both kingly and grandfatherly. William watched from nearby, his face showing pride in his wife's instinctive kindness. He knew better than anyone how much Kate and his father meant to each other. During Kate's cancer treatment, Charles had been a constant source of support, sending healing herbs from his organic gardens and calling regularly to check on her progress. When Charles faced his own health battles, Kate had reciprocated with homemade meals and cheerful video calls from the children. The photographers captured every second of the exchange, but what their cameras recorded was more than just a formal farewell. They captured a moment of genuine human connection, of a family bound not just by duty and bloodline, but by choice and affection. The images would later be described as some of the most touching ever taken of the royal family. Around them, other family members were saying their own farewells, but many paused to witness this tender moment. Princess Anne, usually so stoic, was seen dabbing at her eyes. Prince Edward placed a supportive hand on his wife Sophie's back. Even the cathedral staff, who had seen countless royal occasions, seemed moved by the genuine emotion of the moment. The crowd outside, though at a respectful distance, sensed something significant had occurred. A gentle murmur ran through the gathered mourners, not of gossip, but of recognition. They had witnessed something real, something that reminded them why they still cared about this ancient institution. It was not about crowns and ceremony, but about people who, despite their positions, experienced love and loss just like everyone else. As Kate stepped back, maintaining her curtsy for just a moment longer than required, Charles's expression softened even further. He nodded to her. A small gesture that somehow conveyed pride, gratitude, and love all at once. Then, composing himself with the lifetime of practice, he turned toward his car. But those who looked closely could see that he walked a little straighter, as if Kate's gesture had given him strength for the difficult day ahead. The impact of this moment rippled outward immediately. Within hours, the photographs were being shared across social media platforms, accompanied by messages of how touched people were by the display of genuine affection. News outlets around the world picked up the story, but for once, the coverage was uniformly positive and respectful. Royal commentators, often quick to analyze and critique, found themselves simply moved. One veteran royal correspondent said on live television, "In 30 years of covering the royal family, I have never seen a more genuine moment of family affection. This is what the monarchy needs to be: human, relatable, and real." The public response was overwhelming. Letters poured into Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, not asking for anything but simply expressing how moved people were by the gesture. Many shared their own stories of loss and family support, creating a connection between the royals and the public that went beyond mere celebrity watching. Social media filled with comments from people around the world. A grandmother in Australia wrote about how the image reminded her of her own family's way of showing love. A young father in Canada said it helped him explain to his children that even kings and princesses feel sad sometimes. A widow in England found comfort in seeing that grief was universal, touching even those in palaces. Kate's gesture became a teaching moment in many households. Parents used the photographs to discuss with their children the importance of showing affection, of supporting family members, and of not being afraid to express emotions. Schools incorporated the moment into lessons about empathy and kindness. Within the royal family itself, the moment marked something of a turning point. It showed that the new generation, led by William and Kate, could honor tradition while still being authentically human. Charles, as king, seemed to embrace this approach, allowing more genuine moments to be shared with the public in the months that followed. The relationship between Kate and Charles continued to deepen after that day. They were seen laughing together at state banquets, sharing knowing looks during long ceremonies, and supporting each other through the challenges of royal life. When Kate returned to full duties after her cancer treatment, Charles was one of her biggest champions, often praising her strength and dedication in speeches. Months later, when asked about the moment in a carefully controlled interview, Kate simply said, "Family supports family. That's what we do." Charles, in a separate conversation, referred to Kate as a blessing to our family and our nation, his voice carrying unmistakable warmth. The image of that farewell became one of the most iconic royal photographs of the decade. It was used in exhibitions about the modern monarchy, in books about royal history, and in countless articles about how the institution was evolving. But more than its historical significance, it remained a deeply human moment that resonated with people everywhere. Years later, when royal historians looked back at the reign of King Charles III, many would point to that moment outside Westminster Cathedral as emblematic of his approach to monarchy. It showed a king who understood that true strength came from showing vulnerability, that dignity could coexist with emotion, and that the crown was made more powerful by the humanity of those who wore it. The farewell, everyone felt, was more than just a goodbye to a beloved duchess. It was a hello to a new kind of monarchy, one where love was not hidden behind protocol, where family meant more than titles, and where a simple kiss on the cheek could speak louder than any royal proclamation. In that tender moment between a daughter-in-law and a father-in-law who had become so much more to each other, the world saw what really mattered, and in seeing it, they felt it too, making it truly the farewell everyone felt.